Good day and welcome back to Scriptures Unlocked. We are now on to Genesis chapter 42, and in this presentation we will now look at Joseph's father Jacob sending his brothers to Egypt to buy grain. So this presentation is entitled Joseph's Brothers Sent to Egypt. So in the previous presentation, viewers, we ended with the start of the first year of the famine in Egypt, with all the surrounding nations coming to the land of the pharaohs to buy food. So here's a recap of what transpired in the previous chapter, Genesis 41 verse 54 to 57. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he said to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was sore in all lands. Which takes us now to Genesis 42, verse 1 to 3. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do you look upon one another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. So it's quite evident, viewers, that the famine was now affecting Jacob and his family in the land of Canaan. And as they discussed their next steps, their father mentioned Egypt, which resulted in his sons having a strange look on their faces, probably due to their guilty consciences, as Joseph's brothers never forgot what they did to him 21 years ago when they sold him to Midianite merchantmen who were heading to Egypt. And here on screen you can see Jacob seeing off his 10 sons with the sole intention of them buying grain in the land of Egypt to return for their own sustenance. And in the foreground you can see Jacob with his son, his youngest son Benjamin, who was not allowed to go to Egypt with his 10 brothers. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. You see, viewers, Jacob never forgot what happened to Joseph the last time all his sons left home. So as a result, he was fearful and became overprotective of Benjamin, the only remaining son of his beloved wife Rachel. Therefore, Benjamin remained at home with Jacob. And the sons of Israel, who is Jacob, came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. So here is a map of their travels. Here was where they lived, in Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and they made their trek all the way from Hebron down to Beersheba, through the Kadesh Oasis, through the wilderness of Shur, and then made their journey all the way to Egypt to buy corn for their families. And on screen you are seeing Joseph recognizing his 10 brothers as they came and bowed down themselves to the governor of Egypt, not knowing that it was their very brother whom they had sold in slavery. Genesis 42 verse 8 and 9 tells us this. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. So viewers, Joseph the governor of Egypt personally supervised the granaries or the storehouses near the border of Canaan, as this was the most vulnerable area of Egypt for an invasion by another country during the famine. Additionally, it appeared that all foreigners coming to Egypt during the 7 years of famine were subjected to questioning to ensure that no spies were admitted to scout their storehouses. So viewers, as the only country with grain or food during the 7 years of famine, Egypt was susceptible or vulnerable to attacks from neighboring countries who would want to steal their resources. So Joseph, as the governor, as an astute governor, he personally supervised the granaries near the borders of Egypt and Canaan, because this was the area that if an attacking force was going to enter Egypt, this is where they would come. Because as I mentioned in previous presentations, approximately 92 to 96% of Egypt is desert. Desert to the west and desert to the south. The Nile River ran through Egypt, and the cities of Egypt were on the east bank and on the west bank around the Nile River, because that was the area that was lush and where agriculture could be done. So all the cities were located around the Nile River, and Joseph took up his position at the borders of Egypt and Canaan. So every single foreigner who entered Egypt had to see the governor, and they had to be questioned to ensure that they were not spies. So that is what happened. So his brothers came, and Joseph recognized them immediately as they bowed themselves down to him as the governor of Egypt. So viewers, Joseph recognized his brothers immediately, but none of them had any clue that the governor was their brother, as it was 21 years ago when his brothers had last seen him at the age of 17 years old. Joseph was now mature. He was now 38 years old, and he looked and dressed like an Egyptian. And neither would they have even imagined that Joseph would even attain such lofty heights to become the governor of Egypt, because the main motivation behind them selling Joseph into slavery was with the sole intention of thwarting his dream of reigning over them coming to fruition. And let's just recap the dream that Joseph had and his brother's reaction to his dream. Genesis 37 verse 5 to 8 tells us this. This was when Joseph was 17 years old. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, because they understood the dream and what it meant, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. So this was the dream that Joseph remembered when he saw his brothers bowing down before him. And notice the plan that they would then execute against him all those years ago in an attempt to kill his dream. The plot against Joseph. Genesis 37 verse 18 to 20. And this was when Jacob sent him out to look for his brothers in Shechem, and he was told that they went on to Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now therefore, and let us slay him, let us kill him, and cast him into some pit. And this was the story that they concocted. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. So that was the motivation behind them selling Joseph into slavery. However, as providence would have it, the actions they took 21 years earlier provided the very means through which Joseph's dreams would be fulfilled. Scripture also tells us that Joseph spoke roughly to his brothers and accused them of being spies. But this was not because he was bitter or being vindictive. Joseph held no resentment against his brothers, but he was going to test them to see if they had changed or had any remorse for what they had done to him. So Joseph accused them of being spies. And their response in verse 10 of Genesis 42 was to say, Nay, my Lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's son. We are true men. Notice, they profess to be true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. I'll explain what that phrase one is not means to the Hebrew mind. So viewers, when accused of being spies, Joseph's brothers professed that, and I quote, "We are true men," end of quote. But their answer to the accusation of being spies gave Joseph a glimpse into the lie that they had been telling for so long, because it was now clear to him that they had told his father that he was dead. The phrase "one is not" means one is dead. And this was a blatant lie from these so-called honest men, because they had condemned their brother to a life of servitude when he was sold into slavery. His brothers were not truthful about what had happened to him, so Joseph continued to test them. And Joseph said unto them the second time, "That is that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither." And the Hebrew word translated as proved is bahan. It occurs 29 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 974. It has been translated as try 19 times, prove 7 times, examine once, and so forth. So Joseph was now going to put them under an examination to test them, to try them, and to prove if what they were saying is true, even though he knew that they were not spies but his very brothers. So Joseph was going to scrutinize their every word to get information as to what they were saying about him and what lies they had told their father. So Joseph was going to test, prove, or try his brothers. And here on screen you can see Joseph pointing in an accusatory manner to his brothers, saying, "You are spies." And then he said to them, "Send one of you and let him fetch your brother, and he shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved," or in other words, that your words may be verified, whether there be any truth in you or else. By the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. The third time he's accusing them of being spies. And he put them all together into the ward 3 days. So he imprisoned them, he confined them for 3 days. Joseph placed his brothers in a holding area for 3 days for them to contemplate which one will go back to their father and bring their youngest brother back to Egypt, thereby proving that they were telling the truth and were not spies. But something transpired while they were in prison and were talking among themselves, which allowed Joseph to change his mind about keeping back all 9 of them and sending back 1. And Joseph said unto them the third day, "This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and he shall not die." And they did so. So here, Joseph had a change of heart. Instead of allowing 9 of them to remain in prison and sending 1 back to Canaan for their brother Benjamin, Joseph reversed his decision and said, "I will send back 9 of you and I will keep 1 until you bring back your brother to Egypt." Notice, viewers, that Joseph changed his mind after 3 days, because he initially said that he would keep 9 of the brothers in Egypt and send only 1 back to Canaan to fetch Benjamin. But when he overheard their discussions and that their guilty consciences pricked their minds, he decided to let only 1 remain in Egypt, while the other 9 brothers returned to Canaan with supplies for the famine. Notice what Joseph heard them saying, which caused him to change his mind. Genesis 42 verse 21 tells us this. "And they said one to another, while they were in the prison, We are verily guilty concerning our brother," that's Joseph, "in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us." So they were now remorseful about what they did to Joseph 21 years ago. They were discussing among themselves what they did. They were showing remorse, and they were saying that at that time, when they placed Joseph in the pit, he was beseeching them, pleading with them, but they would not listen. So the distress that came upon them was being put in prison for 3 days. So here you can see them discussing among themselves and showing remorse being sorry for what they had done to their brother Joseph, and their conscience were being pricked by God, as they were now sorry for what they did. This was what they were saying among themselves during the 3 days while they were in prison. And notice what Reuben said as they were discussing among themselves. Genesis 42 verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child? And ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And notice what we are told. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. So they were talking about Joseph in the presence of Joseph, not knowing that he was their brother. And he understood every word, because he too spoke Hebrew, but he was speaking to them in the Egyptian language, which was then translated to Hebrew so that he could communicate with them. So viewers, Joseph heard for the very first time in 21 years what actually transpired while he was in the pit, when his brothers conspired against him. And he also learned that Reuben, the firstborn, stood up for him and actually defended him against the wishes of the others. Genesis 42 verse 24 to 26 tells us this. And Joseph turned himself about from them and wept and returned to them again. And this tells us that this discussion that they were having took place while they were in the prison for 3 days. So when he heard about it, he wept and returned to them after the 3 days and communed with them and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. So Simeon was the one that Joseph took as his prisoner that would remain in Egypt while the other brothers went back to Canaan with the resources for the famine. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's money into his sack and to give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. Here you can see on screen that while they were there discussing among themselves in the prison, Joseph was there eavesdropping, listening to their conversation, and he was overcome with emotions. He finally understood and learned what transpired, who was saying what while he was in the pit, and which of his brothers actually defended him against the wishes of the others. So Joseph was there listening and was there learning. But having made his decision, he kept, as you can see on screen, Simeon was taken. We're not told why Simeon was chosen, but all we know is that Simeon was chosen. And if you were to look at it, if Joseph was going to choose one of his brothers to remain in the land of Egypt as a prisoner, he would have chosen the eldest, Reuben, because Reuben, as the oldest, would be more valuable to his father as the firstborn and the one who would inherit the birthright and the patriarchal blessing based on their culture. When he learned that Reuben actually defended him, Reuben was not chosen, but the second oldest brother, Simeon, was chosen. So that could be a possible reason why Simeon was chosen. Joseph's first brothers were Reuben the eldest, Simeon the second oldest, Levi, and Judah. These were the 4 first sons of Jacob. So Reuben, as the firstborn, when Joseph learned that he was actually defending him against his other brothers, he was not chosen, but Joseph chose the second eldest, Simeon. So Joseph kept Simeon back and he gave them sacks of corn to take back to their families in Canaan. Genesis 42 verse 27 and 28 tells us this. And as they made their journey, and as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God had done unto us? So they were even now blaming God for this blessing that they had received. But because they were guilty of what they had done to Joseph, their consciences were playing tricks on them. And they even believed that even what had happened was as a result of God punishing them for what they did to Joseph. So as I showed earlier, Joseph became awashed with emotion when he saw the working of God in his brothers' hearts, which led them to be remorseful about what they did to him. So he cried. When Joseph allowed them to leave, he gave them enough corn to sustain them for a while in Canaan, as well as provision for their journey, and did not even charge them for the grain, but restored the money back in their respective sack. And notice what happened when they got back home to Canaan. Genesis 42 verse 29 onwards tells us this. And they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell them, saying, and they replayed the story of what happened. The man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not. So they were also again telling their father what they told Joseph. The same lie that they had told him 21 years ago, they now repeated. So they're saying, we told him that one of our brothers is dead, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your household, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So here on screen, you are seeing them pulling their sacks of grain and seeing their money on top of the grain. Notice all the brothers saw their money returned to their sack. And Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not. Jacob was even repeating what they had told him. Joseph is dead, and Simeon, for all I know, is dead, because is not means to die. And he will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. So Jacob, not even realizing what he said, which was actually the truth, he said, me, your father, have ye, his brothers, bereaved of my children. So in other words, in this statement, he was saying that they were the cause of Joseph being dead, and they were the cause of Simeon being kept back in Egypt. And as far as Jacob is concerned, he might as well be as good as dead. So when Joseph's brothers returned to Canaan, they told their father all that transpired in Egypt. But what stood out the most to Jacob was the fact that this was now the second time that he had sent out all his sons, and they had returned without one of his sons. 21 years ago, Joseph did not return home. This time around, Simeon was not with his brothers, and they were now telling Jacob that the governor had specifically demanded that Benjamin be taken to Egypt before they would be ever allowed to buy grain again in Egypt. Viewers, Jacob saw his current predicament as evidence that all these things were conspiring against him, and he was very reluctant to let Benjamin leave his sight, much less to go all the way to Egypt, which prompted Reuben to make this ridiculous suggestion. Notice what Reuben said to his father. Genesis 42 verse 37. Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons, kill my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. So he was saying to his father, if I don't bring back Benjamin from Egypt, you can kill your 2 grandsons, my own sons. That was a ridiculous and asinine proposition to his father. Genesis 42 verse 38, the final verse. And he, Jacob, said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead. So there it is, viewers. The phrase one is not is explained by Jacob, who understood the phrase. He explained, based on what he said earlier, that one is not. He now explained what that means. He said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, because that is what they told him, and he is left alone of my beloved wife. If mischief befall him by the way in the which he go, then shall he bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. So here, Genesis 42 verse 38 tells us clearly that the phrase one is not means one is dead, because Jacob explained to us by that phrase, he means your brother is dead. And here you can see Jacob very distressed when they told him that they had to return to Egypt with Benjamin in order for Simeon to be released and in order for them to buy grain throughout the rest of the famine. So viewers, that brings us to the end of Genesis 42, where we looked at what transpired when Jacob's sons were sent to Egypt to buy grain, where they met their brother Joseph, and the dream that he had when he was 17 years old came to fruition, was fulfilled when his 10 brothers bowed themselves down to him, and he had dominion over them, because as the governor of Egypt, he had the power of life or death, because if he did not sell them the grain, then they would starve to death in the land of Canaan. So this again proves that God knows the future. He gave Pharaoh an insight into the future 14 years in advance, where he told him that there would be 7 years of abundance, and after those 7 years, there would be 7 years of famine. This allowed Egypt to prepare in advance for the impending famine. And then Joseph was elevated, he was promoted as the man to take charge of the situation, and he it is who became the governor of Egypt. And he was the one who decided, because he was second in command over Egypt. Everything that Joseph said had to be followed, because Joseph was in command of the entire situation. So as we continue through the series, we will then look at in Genesis 43 how his brothers would return to Egypt with their youngest brother Benjamin, as Joseph had demanded. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and may God continue to bless us as we continue to study his words to prove all things. Have yourselves a great day.